Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our presentation on managing your blood sugar with nutrition for people with diabetes. My name is Joyce, and we have Kory here too, and we're both dietetic interns at the University of Michigan School of Public Health, and we're super excited to bring you about this topic. So overall, you'll see that we'll be talking about nutrition tips on how to manage your blood sugar levels through meal balance using a plate, timing of meals, talking more about blood sugar and the glycemic index, carbohydrate counting, eating fiber, sugar alternatives, and then showing you a sample lunch menu. So the first thing this general topic that we'll discuss is the diabetes plate method. So the American Diabetes Association recommends following the diabetes plate method in order to determine how much of a meal you should eat in terms of portion size, as well as just general type of ingredients available. So this is in regards to the standard 9-inch plate. And you'll see here that half of your plate is recommended to be non-starchy vegetables. And they should really focus on having just a variety of different vegetables and hopefully a different variety of colors. That way you can have different sorts of nutrients, including different micronutrients and vitamins, minerals, as well as just having an overall balanced diet. The second one that we'll see is proteins. So proteins are recommended to make up a quarter of your plate and have it mainly composed of lean protein, so things that have lesser saturated fats and provide just more beneficial protein needs to you, and additional options that are plant-based too. So anything like legumes, beans, nuts, tofu, they're all great protein-rich sources. And then the last quarter of your plate is focused on having carbohydrate foods. So this includes your whole grains, which can include your rice, your breads, your just about anything like that. And then we always recommend to go with whole grains rather than refined grains. So whenever you can go with like brown rice or brown or whole wheat breads, that's always something that's more favorable compared to like white rice or white bread or pasta or like non-whole wheat pasta, just because it has that addition of fiber that we'll talk about a little bit more detail that Kory will introduce. This also includes even our starchy vegetables like potatoes too. So we only recommend a quarter of your portion, and fruits as well. So fruits is included in the carbohydrate category because of its natural sugar content. So although natural sugars are very different from added sugars that you'll have in your diet, fruits still have sugars. So that's why we recommend still having it as like a smaller portion compared to our non-starchy vegetables. And very lastly, we have your beverage on the side. So we recommend drinking either water or unsweetened drink with no added sugar. So ultimately, we all eat different foods and our meals can look very different. So this is just an example that following the diabetes plate method can also look different depending on what you eat too. So based off this plate method, you will see an example below with the pizza sharing half the plate and then like a salad sharing the other half of the plate. And so these are sometimes examples of combination food where a pizza has like pretty much a lot of these ingredients or a lot of these like categories, such as your carbohydrate as like the flour base. Then you'll have like some proteins on top as well as some vegetables on top. So just keep in mind that overall you want to see general what the meal generally breaks down to and try to aim for a portion that still gives you what the plate says. I know that generally I like to eat soups and stir fries, and they look very different from the plate method too. So just making sure that the ingredients that you have set up still follows the idea that 50% are about like non-starchy vegetables, and you can introduce a quarter of carbohydrates and a quarter of protein foods too. And so when we talk about a well-balanced meals, we also should talk about meal timing because both of them play a big role in keeping our blood sugar stable. So the general golden rule is having your first meal within 1.5 hours of waking up. and then having your next additional meals every 4 to 5 hours afterwards. And then if you do have snacks, if you're hungry, just introduce them when you're hungry too. So on the right is a sample table of what it seems like if you wake up at 7 a.m. So that means that a good, well-balanced meal timing could be that within an hour. So at 8 a.m., you have your first meal, so breakfast, and then 4 hours would pass and you would have your lunch at 12. Your dinner might be portioned until 5 p.m., but you might have a little afternoon snack at 3 p.m. and then a little evening snack at 7 p.m. to tide you over until the evening. So you'll see it in this graph that you'll have your peaks of your blood sugar going up as you eat your food, because usually when you eat food, your blood sugar goes up, and you'll see it kind of like edge away and then come back up for your next meal. And this is a very like normal, good, well-balanced portion. And I'll talk about this a little bit more. So below here, I have a graph of kind of like what we saw earlier, but just showing you some other things that may happen depending on what type of timing you have of your meals. So the one we talked about before is kind of follows the green line, which is your optimal like your meal and blood sugar timings. You'll see there's 4 peaks, and this usually ties together with like 3 meals and a snack, or maybe they had 4 meals too. That's portioned throughout the day. And take a look at the red line and also the yellow line. So the red line is seen as spikes and lows, and the yellow line is grazing. Now I want you to take a second to take a look at this and think about why this what are some reasons why you might see this happening? So why might you have spikes and lows? And then why might you have grazing? Okay. So to just introduce yourself, to introduce you to spikes and lows. So a big reason why this might be the case is if you just don't have, you don't have consistent eating timings of food. So when you get hungry, you'll actually see that your body has its own like sugar stores, and it'll start breaking it down earlier without even having eating food. And so you'll see that there's a general trend up. And then by the time you eat food, that's going to push it even higher. So you'll reach your peak. And then if you wait another long period for your next meal, so another part when your body is getting hungry, it's going to start to push your blood sugars very low. So even to the point of like low blood sugars, which we know we want to avoid for the consequences of that. And then once you eat again, it's going to push it really high. So these are examples of what you might see with your blood sugar levels in spikes and lows when you have periods of times where you're really not eating foods between the 4 to 5 hours that are recommended. In terms of the grazing, this is probably named after like horses or like just field animals grazing on the grass that you outside, and they do it like throughout the day. So very similarly, people can graze throughout the day and just consistently eat little snacks. And when that happens, your blood sugar level never really truly goes back to a low peak. It just continues to rise, and continues to give you high blood sugar levels, which we also know is not very good for you in terms of your health. So this is just another reminder that for people who graze, this might be because you're feeling bored or you eat because of your emotions, to just check in with yourself and make sure to really set consistent regular times for meals, so that way you can optimize your blood sugar level ranges so they're not too high or low. And these are very preventable measures that you can do and incorporate in your own lifestyles. And then next we have Kory talking about blood sugars.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. So she touched on how carbohydrates affect blood sugar, but there are things we need to be mindful of. Many of you listening may have heard of the term glycemic index thrown around for the last few years. It's a systematic ranking that ranks how each food affects blood sugar. A lower score equates to making a lesser impact on blood sugar. This is pertinent to our lesson, but the good thing is we don't eat in a vacuum, with one food at a time per meal. Adding protein and a non-starchy vegetable can help balance things out to lower the total glycemic load of the entire meal. A good rule of thumb is to, when fixing your plate, keep your carbohydrates the size of a quarter of your plate, just like Joyce mentioned. Next. So counting carbohydrates at each meal is an important tool for people who have diabetes to manage their blood sugar. Nutrition labels have a lot of information, numbers, and various figures that can make it confusing. Today we will break down how to read a nutrition facts label so we can count on how many carbohydrates we are consuming. First, look at the serving size and compare it to what you have or what you have eaten. In this example, we have 3 pretzels circled in red as the serving size. If a person consumes more or less than 3 pretzels, they will have to multiply or divide to count their carbohydrates correctly. Unless you have eaten the whole container, then we are able to just use the columns in the right side as well. Next, please. Next, examine how many total carbohydrates are in each serving. 1 serving of carbohydrates is equal to 15 grams. As circled in pink, there are 23 grams of carbohydrates per 3 pretzels. This may seem like it is about 1.5 servings of carbohydrates, but don't forget to look at dietary fiber. Fiber is what I have circled in the blue. Fiber can sometimes be subtracted from the total carbohydrates, and this would be called the net carbohydrate of the meal. In this example, it would be the total carbohydrates of 23 minus 1 grams of dietary fiber equaling 22 net carbs. I said sometimes because we don't need to worry about the net carbohydrate load if the total carbohydrates are less than 5 grams per serving. This makes it simple, and this would mean 3 pretzels still need to be counted for about 1.5 servings of carbohydrates. Next slide. Now, for the importance of fiber and the different kinds of fiber. Fiber as a whole is vital to your health, and there are 2 sources of fibers, soluble and insoluble. Soluble fiber lowers your LDL cholesterol, it can prevent constipation, and it slows down digestion. Insoluble fiber plays a role in the GI tract and is essential for a healthy digestive tract. This fiber provides fuel for bacteria, and this beneficial bacteria has a myriad of benefits that include preventing inflammation and enhancing nutrient absorption. Additionally, bringing it back to blood sugars and glycemic index, fiber is one of the main players that can lower the glycemic load of a meal. This brings up a good example of the whole fruit versus fruit juice. Fruit juice is a less ideal choice because fiber is stripped away from the skin, and therefore there would have a higher score on the glycemic index, having a larger impact on your blood sugar. This goes for all drinks containing sugar, like your regular sodas, full sugar Gatorade, Powerade, and those types of beverages. So it would be ideal just to avoid these as much as possible. Next slide. We know that excess sugar is unhealthy for us because of the high calorie content and potentially harmful effects to our human teeth. It makes sense to perhaps to transition to a lower calorie alternative without losing the desired sweetness. But are all these sugar substitutes safe? Things like stevia, monk fruit, aspartame. Well, it tends to be specific to the individual, but the American Diabetes Association supports that sugar substitutes assist in weight management, glucose control, and prevent tooth decay. I say that it is specific to the individual because these products affect people differently. Some people have no reported issues using these, others have reported migraines, and it can stimulate hunger. If you are craving something sweet and drinking a Diet Coke satiates that craving, that should be fine. If you drink a Diet Coke and it causes you to drink and want to drink more of them and more pop and crave more sweets, then it could be an issue for you, and these may not be suitable for your specific situation. There is some evidence that presents an association between diet soda consumption and waist circumference, but no causal link has been established. For example, ice cream and sunglasses sales are increased during the summer months, but does that mean that eating ice cream makes you want to buy sunglasses? No, just like your body, there are multiple factors involved. So, like Joyce previously said, stick to those zero sugar, zero calorie drinks, your diet sodas, Gatorade, zero, Powerade, zero, or water, more importantly. And then that was our brief presentation on diabetic care. Joyce will pop back in and introduce the appetizer and then hand it back to me for a diabetic entree example.
Thanks, Kory. So next, I will talk about a sample lunch menu. And the most important things for people with diabetes is just to stay on like a low carbohydrate meals. And we'll have some examples here below. So starting with the appetizer, we'll start with the bruschetta stuffed mushrooms. And this is a quick and easy menu item. Takes about like 10 minutes to set up or less, and then just takes a little bit more time to cook. And we'll talk about this. So we'll start with the ingredients with 1 pint of grape tomatoes quartered, 2 teaspoons of olive oil, 2 cloves of garlic, 2 teaspoons of dry basil, a third of a cup of mozzarella cheese, that's 2%, 14 large stuffer mushrooms where you can pluck out the stems and stuff the mushrooms, and then 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. So the directions are just to preheat the ovens to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then on a pan, we'll heat in the olive oil and saute the garlic, and then add in the tomatoes and saute them some more for about like 4 minutes, and ultimately remove them from the heat and stir in the basil and cheese to allow them to melt. My mouth is already salivating from this. Then we'll remove the stem from the mushrooms and fill it up with the tomato mixtures as you can see in the photo, and then bake them in the oven for about 15 minutes or so. Then once they're cool, just drizzle them with some balsamic vinegar, and they turn out really good served warm.
Yeah, and then this would be a great example of a main dish for people who have diabetes, a turkey stuffed bell pepper. You're allowed to use any variation of the bell pepper colors you'd like. If you want 5 green, 5 red, 5 yellow, a mix of all three, maybe an orange. It doesn't really matter on the contents of this dish. But then we'll also need olive oil, ground turkey, an onion, garlic clove, and then a different variety of seasonings like ground cumin, Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, paprika, along with 2 medium tomatoes and a cup of shredded cheese. So the directions for this meal is pretty simple, and this meal is great warmed up. The peppers stay pretty well, so if you make 5 or even want to double up on the recipe and make 10, they warm up very well and they're good for the next few days. But first, we'll preheat the oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Cut the peppers lengthwise in half and remove all those seeds. Place in your pan that's coated with cooking spray. And then in a large skillet, heat the olive oil over a medium to high heat. Cook and crumble the turkey with onion, garlic, and all of the seasonings except paprika over medium heat until the meat is no longer pink. Should take about 6 to 8 minutes. Let it cool and then stir in those tomatoes and cheese. And then finally, we'll fill the peppers with the turkey, onion, and garlic mixture. And then we'll sprinkle the paprika over top. Bake uncovered until the filling is heated throughout and the peppers are tender. And this should take about 20 to 25 minutes. It's a great low carb option full of different vegetables, making sure we're getting a variety of protein, vitamins, and minerals in this dish.
Yum. And to finish it off, we'll end with our dessert. So this is a berries and yogurt kind of parfait style. And we'll just begin with just half a cup of Greek yogurt, 2 cups of blueberries, 2 cups of strawberries, and an optional mint leaf. So very simple, like pretty much 3 ingredient dessert. So first off, we'll just add our Greek yogurt to the bottom of the bowl, then add some berries in the middle, and then lastly, we'll top it off with Greek yogurt to finish off the parfait. And if you do have a mint leaf, to garnish it for additional colors. And you'll see that here, it's just very packed with a lot of great antioxidants, as Kory mentioned before too, and has Greek yogurts are also a good source of protein and calcium too. So really good for building strong bones as well. So that ultimately concludes our presentation. We hope you enjoy learning a little bit more about some nutrition tips to get it with managing your diabetes and managing your blood sugar levels, and hope you can try out some of these great recipes. Thank you so much for listening.